Welcome to the Lore You Know. Thanks for joining me today. I am Jeremy Hochhalter. Usually I am joined by Sarah Stewart. She had surgery and is recovering well. I saw her chatting earlier today and she is chipper and on top of things. So hopefully next Friday she will rejoin me for an episode or probably two episodes over 2 weeks about Holofaust, the city of necromancers. Perfect for Halloween. But for today I have donned the Fez of Eldritch Knowledge -1 in, honor of not having my co-host on here with me. So, today we're going a little off topic. It's still Scarred Lands, but it's not official Scarred Lands in the way that it's not published by Onyx Path. But Onyx Path has opened up the Saretian Vault for publication of Ghelspad material, which is that continent that you see on the screen behind me. And myself and several others have been putting things up on the Saretian Vault for months now. And what better way to get the word out there than start talking about it? So, while I am going to be talking about something I created today, it is also awesome because I've seen it popping up in other people's works, and I will talk about those as well. So, let's talk about Keshe. In the Scarred Lands Player's Guide 5th edition, it talks about how there are lesser titans. The older material didn't have lesser titans really mentioned in them, but the newer stuff, it mentions Spiragos, which there was an entire trilogy of adventures that was written about Spiragos and what their artifacts that were left behind do. And so with that in mind, I wanted to create a weird race because I enjoy weird races. I don't prefer humans when I play. I will play humans, but in fact, if I play humans, it's because I don't want to. I don't want to play somebody who can see in the dark. I know it's a weird thing, but whatever. So I came up with Keshe, who is this marvelous beastie. And I'd like to point out that this is a full color representation of Keshe because Keshe is a creature of chaos, and it both absorbs and reflects all light at all times. And so to the normal eye, everything on it appears black and white because that is how, color works. Absorption of all color is... Oh crap, now I'm going to mess this up. Absorption of all color is black and reflection of all color is white, or the other way around, one of those two. But for those who cast True Seeing or have True Sight, they can see the auras of color that just emanate off of Keshe, and they go crazy. Yes, I am a Lovecraft fan. Yes, I know that this is very Lovecraftian, very cosmic horror. In fact, my mug is a Cthulhu Death Wish coffee mug. Yep. And, Eldritch. But that being said, this is the lore that I instilled into the Divine War with it. So essentially, Keshe has existed since the beginning of the world in some fashion. Sages believe that it's much like the Saretians. Keshe was caught on the world when it was created, but didn't seem to care like the Saretians. Doesn't want to destroy the world. It's just a being of chaos. So imagine this writhing form, those eyes, those nodules on it, all of his little orifices that move around as it moves. These are ever changing and shifting over it. It is nauseating to look upon. And so the other Titans didn't get rid of it. In fact, its influence in the world has helped them to maintain a level of need from mortals. Chaos can definitely mess things up, and so up until the gods, chaos would often be why people turn to the Titans, right? They for that sense of safety, and a lot of that was Kesha's presence as it rolled through the world. So when the Divine War came around, um, there are rumors that Keshe was on literally on both sides, sometimes at the same time, which couldn't be explained. But when the Divine War ended, Keshe was on the side of Denev and the gods, and so much like the other uh, Titans, so Gulthane and Denev, there's really two um, that survived, and I don't want to say were considered part of the victors because Gulthane was still, on the Titan side at the end, but because of his actions, because of his nature, they allowed him to essentially be subsumed by Denev, who then went into her sleep. And so, even though it is her epoch, she's not like active; she's not around, and that left Keshe here. So the gods don't want this thing running around at full power. They don't want it imposing the chaos that it did in the world before. And so knowing, you can't if you didn't catch the Titan episode, you can't kill a Titan. It just doesn't work. Like you can rip out their hearts, you can chop their heads off, you can cut them into little bits, which is what happened, and they stay alive. So these essences are just spread out all over. So the gods chose to chop up Keshe here, and threw its pieces across the world. There are, and this is my own lore, and so I'm going to forget things. Uh, there are 7 pieces of Keshe, I believe, and only a few are known. One fell where the Canyon of Souls is, and I'm going to bring up the map here real quick. Pew! Alright, so right there in Vesh, to the west of that is a large mountain range called the Kelder Mountains, and there is a area called Antanazu, which there's East Antanazu and West Antanazu, which sit on either side of the Canyon of Souls, which is one of the only passes through the impassable mountains. The other one is down, I think, by New Veneer, and has been taken over by the Classian Empire, so it's very unpleasant to go through for some people. So that being said, this fragment of Keshe fell to the ground in the canyon, and so it went into hiding. And for those who have studied the Saretians, there is a Saretian ruin called the Web of Razors, and it's called that because it is this maze of tunnels of jagged cutting rock created by the winds that rush through the canyon. And the Saretians made their home, like some of the Saretians made their home there and had horrid experiments there. So this thing goes down and starts living there. Now, Titans are not immune to the Saretians' machinations. They are, the Saretians were psionic, and so this is a level of magic that steps away from druidic, which is what you would consider the powers granted by Titans. And the fragment of Keshe that existed or exists, depending on, and I'll get to that, depending on where you are in the mythology, read things it shouldn't have and caught the Saretian language virus, which drove it insane. And for a fragment of chaos to become insane, that was some scary shit. But that being said, it decided it needed children, and so it removed pieces of itself and sent them out away from it. Over time, I'll bring this image back up. Over time, these little bits that look much like this and can still exist to this day began creating children of their own. Not by breeding in the sense that, like a male and female do because they are asexual. Like, it would remove, pieces of itself, and those would then split into other beings, and so gave birth to the Akesheth. Now, the Akesheth were the entire point of Keshe, as far as why I made the Titan up, because I wanted a race that I could play that was just weird. And the original concept for them was that you could play a creature that changes every day. It is a creature of chaos. And in the Scarred Races book that I put out on Saracen Vault, you can play that. But I had a lot of feedback during playtesting that people were like, "Wow, this is really complicated. I don't want to have to play complicated." So you can play complicated. You can play this creature that changes every day, or you can play what has become this distilled order from chaos, nature's influence pushing chaos into order, if that makes sense. And so the Akesheth were born, and the Akesheth are marked by their colors. There are blue. I should open this up so I am sure that I know what I'm talking about. So first you have Akesheth and you have Akashion. Akesheth are these ones that have more of a black subtone, and Akashion are the white ones, like the one that was just on the screen. And then from there they have sub-races beyond that, where there are greens, blues, reds, yellows, and browns. And each one of those grants you a different ability score. You have damage auras, or you were resistant. So the Akashion have damage auras, the Akesheth have damage resistances, and they are based on their colors. These things have only started popping up in the last 100 years, and they are a subterranean race that no one has seen until the Vengeance of the Shunned campaign that shows that you can get on Saracen Vault. That campaign was the word just slipped my mind, a group project that Travis Legg headed up, and he was awesome enough to let me bring in my Akesheth here, throw Keshe into the mix, and so this is where things, lore-wise, you can say they are pseudo-canon, because the Vengeance of the Shunned hasn't been accepted as canon quite yet, but Travis Legg, the line developer, did put it out, and we're hoping that one day it will become canon. During that event, the fragment of Keshe that existed in the Saracen ruins was not destroyed, but was subsumed, was brought into the main antagonist. Now, does that mean it doesn't exist anymore? That's really up for you as a DM. Once she is defeated, does it return? Does it crawl out of her? Does it, does its essence go back to its body, which was found in this subterranean lair? Totally up to you as the DM. What I find really awesome about the community content program is that now I'm seeing things coming out that are mentioning Keshe. So Alain Giorla's Ghelspad Companion Volume 12 recently came out. And in it, he talks about the Fey Spirit Ranger. And this is another thing that I find really interesting, because as mortals, you think you know where you're drawing your power from. You know, make these choices, you pray, or you do whatever it is that your class does to get power from. Rangers, you know, often draw from nature, kind of like a druid, but not always. And in what he created for this companion was the Face Spirit, where let's see, they're wardens of nature and generally remain true to their mission, despite the taint and corruption of the Titan War. But before the Titan War, these Fey spirits, which exist, I would say, concurrent with the Ushada. If you've caught it, earlier episodes, we haven't done an Ushada episode yet, but we've mentioned several times where Ushada are these powerful spirits that people can draw power, or like their class power from. A lot of worship from Fenrilik and Termana are of spirits, and I find it very interesting that in the Ghelspad Companion, he mentions that prior to the Divine War, minor titans like Spiragos and Keshe were the creatures, were some of the creatures that were doling this power out. And that brings into question, what is a lesser titan? Because these, and a lot of the talk on the design level is that lesser titans are just very powerful creatures that aren't quite titanic in their level, and yet have enough power to influence the world. So Keshe obviously is that. Spiragos was obviously that. There are jinn that exist that could definitely be that. There are outsiders, and there are other creatures that the Titans created that could definitely be considered lesser Titans. There are references in the Strangelands, Dragonlands section that talks about how the Dragon Emperor stopped interbreeding. Like, there's now a law that dragons can't interbreed because they were creating these horrific monsters by interbreeding with outsiders and demons. And this was all done like for the war or for previous conflicts, but these things were just insanely powerful. So these are on the level of Keshe and Spiragos. And so yeah, check out Ghelspad Companion Volume 12 to see how that works out as a ranger class. And he also mentions in here, I'm just going up to it real quick, there is a land about 20, let's see, there's a west of the Bronze Hills in the Fangs Fall Peninsula, which is over on the southwest corner of the world, or of the continent. There are these stone pillars on a small island. They were raised, I feel like, just a long time ago. Erosion from the wind and sea has set in. So, I mean, this is centuries, if not thousands and thousands of years ago. And the original area was raised by... Sorry, I totally read this early. Gulthane. There was a pillar raised to Gulthane, who was the Titan that created the Dareth, and a lot of other really pretty decent creatures. And the other Titans were like, we're going to destroy all your toys, and then we're going to rip your eyes out. Yeah, it was pretty horrid. So the Titan spawn followers have worked for control over this, what they consider a holy place, and raised their own effigies to their titan. And so there are, these stone pillars that represent each of the titans, but then there are smaller pillars, and he points out that one is to Spiragos and one is to Keshe. Um, it is really fun to see little bits of lore working their way through the community content program. So that really is today's episode. It was meant to be really short, and it was. If anyone is watching and has any questions, that would be awesome. But otherwise, check out the Scarred Lands, Scarred Races supplement if you want to know more about the Akesheth and their racial abilities, how to play them. You can check out the Ghelspad Companion Volume 12 to learn about the Fey Ranger and more, just bits of lore that have made it out there. And also, if you haven't picked up a Titanic Feast and the rest of the Vengeance of the Shunned series, it is a fun campaign. There's a lot to it. So you have your main pieces, and then there are a lot of side quests. You can get the main sections in print on demand right now, or as a single PDF, or you can buy them all separately and then work them into the campaign that you have now. But yeah, you get some hands-on experience with Keshe. Quick question, yay! When first read about Keshe, I mean associated with beholders. Was that an influence? That absolutely could have been an influence. Also, gibbering mouthers. Like these creatures that are just weird could very well be attributed to Keshe. There's not a lot of lore in the official material that states these outsiders are from here, and in older editions, outsiders were an official like subtype of creature, whereas now they are aberrations, I believe. So it fits the newer concept of aberration much more than it fit outsiders. So if you like, of course you can't have illithids on Scarred Lands because they are Forgotten Realms intellectual property, but creatures like that came from beyond the stars would be outsiders, but now they're considered aberrations. And beholders, in the way that they are written for Forgotten Realms mostly, is that they also came from this place beyond our plane, or at least beyond the stars that surround Faerun and the Forgotten Realms. But that gets into the whole crystal sphere and all of that stuff, which doesn't necessarily exist for Scarred Lands. So a lot of those concepts of outsiders are now aberrations, and could they be influenced by Keshe? Absolutely. I would say that beholders and gibbering mouthers and creatures like that are either things that were influenced by the presence of Keshe prior to the Divine War, whereas the Akesheth, this playable race, is nature's influence back on nature, pushing against that chaos and creating something that is more ordered, more uniform. When the Akesheth began breeding and creating their progeny, like if you are an Akesheth Rill, which are so if you are an Akesheth Rill, you are the black and blue version. If you create children, they're not all the same as you, and you can even still, like, the chaos hasn't been worked out yet, you can still give birth to what are called Okashendu. I make up words that I always have a very hard time pronouncing, which are They were the firstborn. They were the ones that were chaotic. Every morning, rule wise, every morning you would wake up and you would be a different version of yourself. So your essence shifted continuously. You might wake up and be black and red, and so you have this resistance to fire, and you have these abilities based off of that. And the next morning you might wake up and you were white and green, and so you have this aura of damage that is poison based. But over time, nature has pushed back and created less of that. And so while these creatures may still appear, they are a lot less. And the creatures that I had a name for these as well. Sorry, hang on. I think that's actually in this other book. I lost it. You can they technically can also still give birth. It's more of a matter of separating a piece of themselves, which grows into another thing. But they can still give birth to those two smaller versions of what Keshe looks like. So these here tentacle beasts. Also, it's really entertaining when you send off art orders for stuff like this, and you get back Tenta Beast as the file name. So now, whenever I say it, I call this Tenta Beast. But that being said, the society that has been created by the Akesheth is still very new, and they are still growing out of their chaos. So they still can spawn these things, which then roll around and are crazy. The other interesting thing, I know I said it was the end of the episode. I lied. Because of the influence of the Sluritian language virus on this fragment of Keshe, there are those Akesheth who have psionic abilities. And obviously there aren't psionics really written for 5th edition yet. But what makes this important is the Sluritians had builder beetles, these Sluritian builder beetles, which in of themselves are just these creatures that have like a certain level of psionic connection with the Sluritians, but they secrete these this substance that is very malleable to thought. And so those creatures that have psionics can just think at it and create an object out of it, can form it. And so the city that they have built near the ruins of the web of razors, the piece of the fragment of Keshe, if you're playing with it, still alive, lives in the fragment in the web of razors, and the Akesheth live nearby. They've learned that as much as they revere their creator, which is Keshe, or at least this fragment of Keshe, it is still chaos, and so it sometimes just decides to eat those who come to revere it. And so moving away from it and living on their own has been better for their existence. But they've really built up. They moved in these ruins, which I think were dwarven, part of the Charduni Empire that fell, if I remember correctly. I'm not seeing it in the section I have up, but they're using the builder beetle resin to essentially create structures and fixed structures that were there, and they have weapons and clothing that are all made from this, and they can harden it as hard as steel or rock, or they can be as soft as silk and flow. And it's that is from 5th or from 3rd edition stuff that I took and made relevant to a society besides the Sluritians, because the Sluritians are currently gone, but having a fragment of Keshe existing in one of their ruins might be a key to bringing them back, if that's where you want to go with your campaign. I highly recommend it, because those Sluritians are awesome. Anyway, I'm Jeremy Hochhalter. I own and operate this here channel on Twitch. If you're watching on YouTube, catch us live on Fridays at... I'm always terrible at time zone changes. At 2 o'clock Eastern, WH Publications. You can find me on Twitch at WH Pubs or on Facebook at WH Publications. On Friday afternoons after The Lore You Know at, let's see, it's at 4:30. Yep, 4:30 Eastern. You can see the Curiosity Cache, which is a Scarred Lands actual play set in Shelzar. It is a blast for us to play. I hope it is a blast for those who watch. On Mondays, I'm on Travis Legg's actual play, which is Scarred Lands Family Affair. That has been a hoot. And on Wednesdays, I am in Chaz Calendar's Final Fantasy XIV inspired D&D 5e actual play called Academia Chronicles of Porta Temporia. All of the games I'm streaming on are a hoot. Check them out. That one is here on WH Pubs. You can catch Travis's. I do host it here, or you can head over to Plastic Age Plays on Twitch to catch that live. Other news, today I released the Visual Watch Dromius book, which is the bastion city of the Minotaurs, who are a darn near extinct race here on Skarn. They were created by Denev and almost got wiped out during the Divine War. Check it out if you would like to. I will put the links in the show notes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That is awesome of you to say. It was definitely a labor of love. The Minotaur, who check out the Yugman's Guide to Ghelspad Part 5 that came out, I think, 2 weeks ago, and that gives you the racial stats for how to play a Minotaur. Travis was awesome enough to let me kind of play around with the traditional concept and move it a little bit and get a little wonky with it. So the Minotaurs that you would play here in the Scarred Land setting are not the Minotaurs you would expect. To an extent. They have horns. They still can gore you. It's fun. I'll put all those links in the show notes. Thanks to Alain, I'm going to get your name right one of these days, Alain Giorla, for adding my stuff to his Ghelspad companion. That was super awesome to see. And I will see everyone next Friday, hopefully with Sarah. Have a great time. See you next time. Bye.